Eileen, if you would take us to our first slide of our scripture, we're going to have a moment of prayer.
Yes. Let me just go ahead and share. Can you all see that all right?
Yes.
Perfect.
The scripture, Galatians 3:28, is what we hang all of our work and where we have our mission, where our mission and focus drives the General Commission on the Status and Role of Women. There is no longer Jew or Greek. There is no longer slave or free. There is no longer male and female, for all are one in Christ Jesus. And when we look at this epistle, Paul has such great aspirations here. He talks about the religious and cultural separateness of the Jewish people and everything that set them apart. And so when he's distinguishing that there's no longer slave or free or social class, or that these things have no more bearing, that we are all siblings in Christ, this is a strong declaration, right? It's saying that all barriers of class and power have lost their sting. And unfortunately, we live in a time where all of these separations are very much prevalent. But we stand with this great hope that our work, the work of the General Commission on the Status and Role of Women, all of your work as the church, and especially our mission as the United Methodist Church for the to make disciples for the transformation of the world. That is for us the beloved community which we seek after. So won't you pray with me? Gracious God, hear the voices of your daughters. Strengthen us to be light bearers of your word and give us the tenacity to never give up, to continue to fight for justice and equity in whatever form it may present itself. Help us to be mission focused, oh God, to provide support and encouragement so that we can experience what it means to be seen. This is our prayer. Amen. Now we can go down to the purpose. So the purpose, we like to rehearse this so that we are all clear of our status and role. The primary purpose of the General Commission on the Status and Role of Women shall be to challenge the United Methodist Church, including its general agencies, institutions, and connectional structures, to a continuing commitment to the full and equal responsibility and participation of women in the total life and mission of the church, sharing fully in the power and the policy making at all levels of the church's life. And this, of course, is from our Book of Discipline, paragraph 2102. I want you to listen to this paragraph. If you're able to see it, I know it's a lot, then you go ahead and read it for yourself. But I have a question, because I'll ask the question first. I want you to listen for what is missing. This is paragraph 4, article 4 from our Book of Discipline. The UMC is part of the Church Universal, which is one body in Christ. The United Methodist Church acknowledges that all persons are of sacred worth. All persons, without regard to race, color, national origin, status, or economic condition, shall be eligible to attend its worship services, participate in its programs, receive sacraments upon baptism, be admitted as baptized members, and upon taking vows declaring the Christian faith, become professing members in any local church in the connection. In the UMC, no conference or other organizational unit of the church shall be structured so as to exclude any member or constituent body of the church because of race, color, national origin, status, or economic condition. So if you would, unmute yourself and tell me what is missing in this paragraph.
Gender.
Say it again.
Gender.
Gender is missing.
And
Yes.
sexuality.
And for the past 4, for you and I, we have been trying to get that word put into paragraph 4, article 4. So please take this paragraph, take a picture if you'd like, share it with your delegation, and pray that there is some change at this general conference. I don't know why that's, well, we do know why it's such a big deal, but the fact that it's missing, I think is very important. Today, our time is going to be an overview of what monitoring is. And as I stated before, our goal is to build the beloved community, which we pray will exist while we're still alive, right? So we seek to bring excluded individuals or groups of persons into all processes and decision-making in a way that shares power. So my question for the body is, do you already have monitors at your annual conference sessions? Maybe I could see the group, Eileen, and this way they can raise their hands. You can raise a virtual hands if you want to. So some of you have monitoring already at your annual conference. And do you need to know how to get a monitor? Or if you're not monitoring, how can you have permission to monitor at your annual conference? That's the question. Well, maybe somebody who monitors would share with the group what steps you take to make sure that you have an opportunity to report back at your annual conference session coming this spring or summer. Would one of you share?
I'm interested in hearing a little bit more from Lisa Jo. Lisa, could you speak a little bit more to your comment? You said we do not, at the last AC, there wasn't even a COSROW committee. Does that mean there is this year?
I don't know what is currently happening, but I'm in the New Mexico annual conference, and we had 3 districts and now we have 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so in losing that one district, they were late on nominations. And then we had a district superintendent who was brought up on charges, and so we're very behind. We're just going to say that.
Okay.
In Virginia, we've been monitoring for several years. So even though we were not quite organized last year, they still had us on the schedule for annual conference at the beginning and the end. But I'm pretty sure a few years ago, it was something that had to be asked for.
And Julianne, will you take it upon yourself to ensure that you will have a spot this annual conference?
I'm going to report back to the rest of our annual COSROW, annual conference COSROW after this meeting. And so I think there is someone whose job it is to do that. So I'm just going to check that we were on track.
Thank you. And Lisa Jo, do you need any assistance in moving our agenda forward by having some monitors this year?
That's part of why I decided to sign up for this when I saw it come across my Facebook feed.
Great. So if your COSROW unit is not active, then I would ask that you take it upon yourself to connect with your Director of Connectional Ministries and your conference session chairpersons, and inform them that per discipline, you would like an opportunity to represent COSROW, and at the very least, be recognized as a monitor throughout the sessions and be given time to report back to the body. That's within your right to ask for those things as the agenda for annual conference, excuse me. Eileen suggests that you copy my email or GCSRW at info copy us as you write the leadership of your annual conference. You correspond with them.
And
Okay.
it might be helpful to acknowledge this particular event today, that you attended a GCSRW sponsored training event online today that encouraged every annual conference to carry out the mandate that is given to COSROW to monitor.
And I see Janice said that this year they are gearing up to monitor in their annual conference in South Carolina. Yes, Juliana, there is time to get these ducks in a row. And you notice that we're quite early in the year, and of course, that's because General Conference is coming up. But we want you, as we go through this day, if you, in the future, you have other questions, or if you share this information with your COSROW chair and they've missed it, you may say to them, well, let's just email Denise and see if we can have a conversation to help us move this in this direction and have monitors this year at annual conference, okay? So Eileen, if we could go back to our slides, please. So this is a graph and a timeline of the GCSRW, when we started, how we are moving forward, and the fact still remains, we still have a lot of work to do. In 2022, we celebrated 50 years of ministry. And I'm sure you saw on Instagram or Facebook or Wisdom Talks, all that we have accomplished. And we did that because of you. But there is so much more that we have to do. We want to continue to reduce, I was going to say increase, to reduce the disparity in salaries, to increase the number of women, lay and clergy in leadership positions throughout our annual conference in our general church. And we need you. Our monitoring that you do gives us the data so that we can document the changes and attend to the areas that need restructuring in our church. The data informs our advocacy, our legislation, and the resources that we're able to develop for you so that we can actually become the beloved community. So Eileen, if we could go down, we can go through the slides after this.
Yes.
This is what monitoring is, right? To observe and check the progress of quality of something over a period of time, to keep under systematic review. And so you hear us talk about healthy boundaries and healthy churches and healthy leaders. And we believe that our monitoring, your monitoring, is what informs us and helps us become a community that is equitable, that is fair in all of its processes and all of its spaces. So that includes the work and structure of your local congregation working together, as well as your district or your church, the corporate parishes that you might be a part of, your district, your annual conference, and then of course, the general church. Let's go to the next slide, please. So now I'd like to invite Becky Posey-Williams, who is our Senior Leadership Development Person in Sexual Ethics. And she is going to share with us, I'm sure you all know Becky because she's probably, hopefully, been to your annual conference to do some training in these areas. Becky?
I still struggle to unmute myself when it's time for me to unmute myself. So good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to see all of your faces here, and thank you for setting aside intentional time to be with us this morning. Before we began, I just put a little sentence in the chat that says we become more human together. And that just caught my attention yesterday when I came across that in an article. and thought, wow, that's really what monitoring is all about. It is all about us becoming more human together through that process of monitoring and receiving information and then giving that information back. So these next couple of slides, I just want to talk a little bit about how do we go about ensuring equity and fairness. And so I definitely know some of you, many of you I do not know, but just for clarification, I'm a lifelong United Methodist. I've been in this position with COSROW for 10 years. And prior to that, I was in private practice as a mental health therapist. So I am not clergy and I am 100% layperson. And I bring to my work a very strong mental health therapeutic background. So I would say that in order to monitor well, we must listen well. And oftentimes we aren't listening well because we're already preparing what we want to say in response to what someone else is saying. And so I don't offer that statement lightly. I offer it very seriously and with great depth. To monitor well, we must listen well. And COSROW uses these 3 guiding principles, which we believe will ensure equity and fairness. The first is that we would listen with integrity. Listen openly, listen wholly, listen wholly being WHOLLY, and listen fully to what is being said. It's important that we examine our own biases when we're aware of our own bias, and we all bring biases to this work. Every one of us do. And those biases are around the attitudes and perceptions that we have learned in the families and communities, schools, churches, whatever, that we have grown up around. And some of these biases we learn certainly in our adult life do not serve us very well. Excuse me. In listening well, it's important that we consider those biases, because those biases are exactly what leads to stereotypes and perceptions that we may hear as we are doing our monitoring. I had a call early this morning from a district superintendent talking about the behavior of a particular staff person in a local church. And the behavior that was described immediately found me in the position of, I have great concern about this person's attitudes and beliefs around gender if this person is so willing to post this kind of information publicly on a website. And so paying attention, if we want there to be equity and fairness, paying attention to what are the stereotypes and perceptions that it seems to us we're hearing. What are the biases that are being brought to the conversation? And are we doing what we can do as monitors to listen with integrity? So Eileen, let's go to the next slide, please. I think as far as what I'm saying today, if there was any one piece that I would hope you would walk away from with today, it would be that it's important to remember that the purpose of monitoring is to help our church be its best. The purpose of monitoring is to help our church be its best. It's not about policing. It's not about shaking a finger. It's not about saying you're wrong, I'm right. It's about helping our church be its best. And in order to do that, it's important that we frame monitoring in a positive intent. This is not negative intention that we are doing. So we take we take the picture of monitoring and we put it in a frame that says positive intent. And we know that intent is just that, it's intent. And it's not very useful if we don't follow it up with thought-filled action. Thought-filled action. So positive intent has to be followed with thought-filled action. Action. Intention followed with action. So what we expect to see when we monitor is that through monitoring, we will be able to facilitate open and constructive communication, raise awareness of conscious and unconscious ways of giving and taking away voice, power, and visibility, and to ensure that there's inclusive language used when referencing God. And if you're not familiar with our God of the Bible curriculum, I encourage you to go to the GCSRW website and take a look at that. It's a very user-friendly curriculum that can be offered in churches, offered to delegates around what inclusive language when referencing God looks and sounds like. So, next slide, Elaine. So we've entered into our role as monitors with an open mind, looking at our own biases, with the ear turned and eyes turned for perceptions, for beliefs and attitudes that may be deeply held around gender, around power, around authority. And so that's what we bring to the table as monitors. And so now we're at this place where we're saying, who is being recognized to speak? We can watch it all day, but nothing is going to change if we don't give this information back to our annual conferences. And COSROW has the responsibility for ensuring there's gender inclusion. And included in that responsibility is the responsibility to give those findings back to the church. So you will observe the persons who are called upon to speak. Who is it equal? Were the last 5 people who presented of one gender and of one race? Is the person who's facilitating the conversation paying attention to who is being called upon? And your findings help remind them to do that. And that, again, is the positive intent. And then the thought-filled action following that intent is we give that information back to leadership and say, in our effort to be our best, I want to bring this to your attention. And I think it's important, I certainly as a monitor think and have done, that it's important that we also address what was done well. Thank you for reminding the body that the last 2 speakers had been women and that you wanted to hear from a man, or the last 2 speakers were men and it's now time to hear from a woman, or whatever. Our feedback, in essence, asks people to slow down and be aware of what is happening within the ins and outs of dialogue that is going on within a conference session. That's really, in essence, what we're asking. We're asking people who are leading these events, will you slow down and be aware of what is taking place? And here's the reality, and this is a subtle reality. Oftentimes, the reason more men are speaking than more women, or whatever the situation is, has to do with that leader's attitudes and beliefs, what they're comfortable with, what their biases are. Perhaps they learned there's more wisdom coming from an elder who is male than an elder who is female. And then lastly, I would say that in the name of monitoring and in the name of a positive intent and follow up with thought-filled action, I would say the United Methodist Church may have the best intentions in the world to create a denomination where everyone feels equal. I think probably if we asked the Council of Bishops, do you have the best intentions to create a denomination where everyone feels equal? I think the likelihood to that question might be absolutely yes. Monitoring feedback helps put that intention into practice. And it is feedback that I believe so often our leaders are not receiving. And so again, I say that with the passion of COSROW's work and mandate to do the work of monitoring. So I think that ends my piece.
Yeah.
And slides. So I'll turn it back to Denise.
Yeah, thanks.
And happy to answer any questions.
Yeah,
or
that's what I was going
concerns.
to ask. Are there
Okay.
any questions specific to what Becky has shared? I hope that you're getting some good morsels of information because I continue to take
I
notes.
see someone raising their hand.
Oh, great. Tori is raising her hand. You can unmute yourself, Tori.
Good morning. Thank you so much for this really grace-filled perspective on monitoring. I think it was really good to hear that perspective. One of the things that I'm curious about is just the posture of the monitor. So one of the things that you kind of said is just to report back to the leadership. So are we just writing a report at the end of the day, and then who are we submitting it to? Are we standing in the session and, you know, just saying a point of order? Can you just the practicality of this? Because again, you kind of gave us the grace-filled response, but what's the actual step?
Mm-hmm. Well, I believe, and we didn't plant Tori to say that at this particular point, but I believe that is literally the next piece. I will say to you that I have monitored jurisdictional conferences for the past 10 years. And when we do our work well on the front end, then we're all singing not only from the same book, but the same page. And so we are recognized by the secretary of the jurisdictional conference as monitors for that conference. We're asked to stand up. So all the delegates in that room know where we're sitting and who we are. And then we're asked to give an introduction of what monitoring is. And then we are called upon randomly. And so you have to be prepared all the time. You're called upon randomly. You know, let's call on Becky with COSROW to come up and give us a little report on how we're doing this morning. And so that is the best as far as my experience has been. Yeah.
Well, yes, and we will get to some more to-dos, and then Reverend Meglassiette will also share like the expectation of how the form should actually be complete and compiled. So it is a compilation of data. You don't have to just stand up at the moment, but there may be times when something is so atrocious that you want to say something, so then you would make your way to the front, that you might be acknowledged by the conference secretary and say, I'd like to share something with you. Is it possible that you can give this to the bishop, whoever's presiding at that moment? That comes up sometime. But I heard Becky say, you know, you're not the police, right? So you don't have to pull them off to the side and check them real fast. So it is a grace-filled experience.
And the one other thing, Tori, I would add for the entire group that I would add real quickly, and then I promise I'm through, is when that event leader recognizes you, calls you by name and says, raise your hand or stand up, everyone in that room knows where you're sitting. And so my experience has been someone will come up and say, I cannot believe they asked the delegates to stand. And very clearly, one of our delegates has just had foot surgery and is in a wheelchair and cannot stand and is so conscientious of their inability to do that. And they completely overlooked that. So was the intention to do that? No. To be able to bring it to their attention and say, someone brought this to my attention, I'm giving it to you, resulted in them standing up immediately and apologizing publicly and saying, we accept responsibility for overlooking that. That's what makes us better together. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank
Sure.
you. You're doing a great job.
Thank you, Tori.
Okay, thanks. Eileen, you want to take us to the next? We have,
Yeah, we have, I think my,
Gabrielle is, has her hand raised.
yes. Gabrielle, you're gonna unmute yourself? There you go.
yes, I am. Hi, good to see you all again. So what do we do or how do we process if our conference leadership is unwilling to do monitoring or to participate? I know it's required by discipline and I know that there's pushback there. But what happens when annual conference leadership is not amenable to monitoring happening?
Becky,
Oh.
I think you have the most.
Oh, am I answering that?
Yes, ma'am.
I would, if I were in that position, and I'm on this call right now, I would, after approaching the appropriate person, Denise suggested the DCM, and having served as a DCM, Denise probably knows that's a good person to approach. And if they say, oh, well, we're not going to do it, we don't have time to do that, we don't have anybody, we're not doing that, then I would turn around and call Denise. And I would say, I'm going to follow up in writing to the conversation I had today. I would like to copy you on that so that you're in the loop now. I would like that, I will put in writing. I'm following up on our meeting today where you informed me we are not going to be doing monitoring in our annual conference. I have reached out to COSROW and have included Reverend Dr. Denise Smart-Sears, who is over that part of COSROW's work, in this email, and am requesting that we set up a call where Denise can be part of it to help our conference understand the mandate behind this. I mean, that's just off the top of my head now. I mean, don't go say Becky
We
Neum
trust
said
the
do that,
top of
because
your
I
head.
can promise you, they probably will just completely disregard it if my name's associated with it. But anyway, yeah.
We trust your response, Becky. And earlier you said when you might want to do it at the very beginning. If you are one that has to reach out and send an email to the DCM or the chairs of the conference sessions, you might include my name, my email from the onset, so that I can see they didn't respond to you, or, and I can follow up with you. Did they respond to you and not include me, so that you can keep me informed of how you're moving forward, because it's February, right? So now is the time to get yourself on their agenda. They are planning, they're not going to wait till the last moment. So that's why we're doing this nice and early. Let's go to some slides, and you will raise your hand if I forget to ask for questions. Let us know that you have some more questions, okay?
Let me just share my screen, and then also shout out to Julianne. Comment. I would also just do it anyway, even if it's unofficial.
Oh, that's what she said.
That's what she said, and you know what? I respect that.
You have to go back a bit before you get to.
You want me to just tell me which
Um,
slide? Oh, I'm going the wrong
Going
way.
the wrong way. Well, keep on prepared.
That's it,
I think
isn't it?
that's, go one more just to see. Okay, next one.
Okay.
Okay, there we are. So you've heard all of this already. We can really go to the next slide, but recording just about everything, right? Ethnic, racial. If you're able to give an idea that it's a more senior person or a young adult, that's also very helpful. Be mindful of the communication that's presented to you, whether it be in tangible paper or print and video. Are we only seeing examples of men leading worship, let's say, and women singing in the choir, or, you know, doing the coffee chat, whatever, you know, be mindful of those differences that you may encounter during your time in your annual conference session. And let's go to the next screen. An important piece is I'm a part of a caucus. And so sometimes you need to do your caucus work before you actually go to the conference session. There may be spaces, if your annual conference has legislative sections, where you can talk about who wants to lead in this area, if that is an opportunity, so that you are prepared to lift up some of your sister siblings in that space and recommend them for some areas. Trust me, our counterparts are already armed. You know, they're going to put the same person up year after year after year after year. So you have an opportunity, when you have an opportunity to raise up and nominate someone, do that. And don't do it in isolation. Make sure that your COSROW team knows, or a strong group of women or representatives are able to come behind you with the name that you are lifting up. So if you're when you are monitoring, you know, always be early, have your assigned seats so that you can be recognized. It's a good time to sit in the same seat every day so that you're easy to find, and that when they want to acknowledge you from the floor, they can also find you. Reverend Meg is going to tell you more about the monitoring forms or the Google Sheets that you might use at some of our annual conferences. And if you see something grossly inappropriate, say something to your COSROW chair immediately. You know, oftentimes, I don't think Becky said this, but oftentimes we experience or see sexual harassment as well. And it's unfortunate, but it does happen. And so how can you get help in that moment? Let's go to the next slide, Eileen, please. So I'm not going to read through this, but you are there to observe. And it takes a lot to be able to see, and I'll use the word the ordinary, because there's so much that we take for granted when we see someone. It's the same person being called on over and over again. If when a woman clergy is speaking, they call her Reverend Denise, but when it's a male clergy, they call that person Reverend Henderson by their surname. Be mindful of those type of incidences and record them. I think an important piece, you can go to the next slide, is when attention has been given to a specific need, like, can you please use inclusive language? And so it's been said, and yet people still keep on getting up and using the language that they want to use. That's disrespectful. That's something that you should be aware of. And I don't know, maybe Tori has a way to deal with that if it keeps on coming up, but so be mindful of the language that is used to reference to humankind or God. And I think I said earlier, when people go on and on, and then others are like, you have 3 minutes, your 3 minutes is up. So you are monitoring the atmosphere. Is it inviting? Are people willingly sharing? Or does it feel a little stale and rigid in the space? Okay, Eileen, let's go to the next slide. So this slide is for Meg. And just before we get to the nitty-gritty, which is very important, this piece here, are there any questions on how to monitor and what monitoring is? All are pretty clear. Okay, I don't see any hands raised at this time. So now I'm gonna ask Reverend Meg Lassiette to come and to walk us through these forms and the importance of them.
Thanks, Denise. So I have put into the chat the link to where we have posted on our website a monitoring toolkit. And if you go to that link and scroll down, this is our COSROW monitoring page. And oh, Eileen, I would like to share my screen, please. Let me pull up my screen real quick.
Got it.
Gotcha. So if you go to that link and scroll to down, you will see a monitoring toolkit where we have definitions and guidelines, what we mean when we say sex, what we mean when we say gender, what we mean how race is defined, and when you are monitoring particularly for race and ethnicity, you're doing that by visual, or if you happen to know a person. So sometimes that is a judgment call. Sometimes you could ask the person that is talking if you want to be very accurate with that. But we found, especially when we have monitored at some national events, it is a judgment call sometimes, and so you need to pay attention. So we've provided some definitions for how we define gender, non-binary, male, female, race, and ethnicity, and that's in the definitions and guidelines. And then we have an observer sheet. So these are the definitions, but then we have this observer sheet. And I know that's a little small for you to see, but we want you to note the bishop, who the leaders are on stage, who's sitting at that head table, who's making presentations. And really, it's just a way of you just making tick marks as people talk. And then at the end of the session, you can go and count up the data. And then we've divided this by leadership, presenters, and contributors to the discussion. So you can track that, and a place for you to tally up the numbers. As Becky and Denise have talked about, we're not just monitoring for the data, we're monitoring for what the atmosphere is like, what the inclusivity is like, what's the feeling in the room. And so we have provided some guiding questions that you can use to help your thinking, or to help you develop some of the narrative that you want to put together when you give the report back to the session. We also have a sheet in here for monitoring worship services, and it's very similar to the first sheet. It's just more set up for a worship service kind of situation. And then during worship particularly, we're looking for questions around the use of inclusive language and inclusive imagery being used throughout the worship services and other presentations. And again, some questions to help you think through your narrative. The last sheet you may or may not need in your annual conference. This is if your conference is doing elections for any committees. What is the nominations report? Do you want to track that? Some years there are more elections going on than other years. This year, coming up after General Conference, there will be a number of quadrennial committees being elected. So you will want to pay attention to that. Some of the big quadrennial committees that will be elected are the Board of Ordained Ministry, the Committee on Investigation, and the Administrative Review Committee are three of the committees that are being elected for 4-year terms. So you will want to pay special attention to that. I'm not as well versed in the trustees. Does anybody know if trustees are elected for 4 years, and is that happening this year?
They are elected for 4 years. And
Okay.
they likely are being, we'll have nominations this year as well. Yeah.
Okay, so pay attention this year with the start of a new quadrennium of all these 4-year committees that are going to be elected. I imagine your nominations report is going to be a little longer than it typically is. That's the gist of the form. Also, if you in the toolkit, there are some examples that you can use if you are invited to introduce what monitoring is. And there are some sample scripts to help you report at the end of your annual conference, if you are invited to do that. So are there questions about, I haven't been following the chat. Are there questions to address with the forms?
Corey did have a question. Tori, did you want to speak a little bit more to what you put in the chat?
Yeah, no, I was just asking was because the form, the heading for the form said for annual conference, it didn't say for general conference. And so I wanted to know, was there just a different form for those that are getting trained for monitoring for general conference?
Yeah, we're adapting these forms for a specific general conference context, so it will be a little bit different, but we'll be tracking the same kinds of data and asking similar questions about what's going on in the room.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mhm.
And I mean, like, as you know, Tori, we will have a separate training for general conference monitors. So this one has, you know, a focus towards annual conference, but you will get an additional more detailed training. So you're all good. Can I just take it on from here?
Brett Johnson has
Mhm.
her hand up, and then yes, you can take it on.
Hi, so in Upper New York, we have our own special way of doing things, and we tend to include monitoring information when we first approach the mic. Is that standard practice? And our new bishop kind of wants us to rework things a little bit. You know, based on what I've been hearing, it's more of an observation rather than collecting the data. Is that accurate?
No, so when you say, Brett, when you say that you are, when you come to the mic, you're reporting back how many people spoke, that type of thing? How
So,
many women, how many men?
so when a person is called up to the mic, they're
Mhm.
supposed to introduce themselves with name, gender identification, clergy, laity, ethnicity, all of that.
Right,
And then the monitors report that the next morning.
that's fine.
Our bishop is trying to get us to streamline things a little bit. We're not exactly sure how he wants us to do that. So we're
Mhm.
just trying to figure out, you know, what are the expectations? Is it literally we just see them come up and do our best guess if they're on their gender identity?
Yeah, we
You
do
know,
our guess best with that, we do.
okay.
If they have not identified themselves, we just guess. We also kind of guess what kind of age range they're in, and we record that. So I would say, listen to what your bishop is asking, and the fact that the bishop is allowing you space, that's a good thing. And then how will you utilize that space? I'm glad that you joined us. I was speaking with your DCM, so I'm glad that you came to. He was like, "I'm a man, I don't want to leave them," but we're glad that you're here. And so,
Thank
and
you.
we can be in more dialogue as we get closer, or as you learn more about what Bishop Boreas wants to do. Okay,
Thank you.
that's good. Good beginning steps. Great.
And then Julianne also had her hand up.
I also have some concerns about the data collection, but I'm guessing that that would be its own thing. So like, are y'all the people to talk to about that? Because I have some ideas, like he just said, it's not standard practice everywhere for everyone to introduce themselves in the same way, but we might have some ways to get around that. Because it's, you know, it's already a little problematic for us to assume that we have that knowledge to make the judgment calls that we are making. So if we could possibly work on that a little bit, I guess y'all are the people who would do it, right?
Well, I think that's more your annual conference. What I hear you saying, Juliana, is like when I stand up to say, I say my name and my pronouns are she, her, and I'm an elder. That's what you want to hear. Is that what you're asking?
So we're also making ethnic and racial judgment calls, like you
Yeah.
just said.
Right.
So like I feel like this is an area that needs a little bit of work, but that's right.
Well,
I would like to
that's-
provide you some feedback at another time, is what I'm saying.
That would be great. So give us
Yeah.
some feedback at another time and let's talk about that. It's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, you know, it's not universal how people introduce themselves. I know Denise and I monitored Bishop Carcagno's trial. And so, you know, when we were putting the data together, it was like, okay, I had this person as an Asian person and somebody else had that person as, and so it can make for a challenging. It would be wonderful if we had a universal language across the denomination that when someone stands up to speak, they identify themselves as clergy, laity, their pronouns. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Eileen, take it away, please.
Yes, ma'am. So hey everyone, my name is Eileen Delgado. I am the Director of Communications for the General Commission on the Status and Role of Women. So I manage our website and our social media. So if you guys see things or don't see things on our communications channels, let me know and I'll do my best to communicate stuff. So in the chat, I just shared a Dropbox link with you all as y'all are monitoring your annual conference sessions. We want to provide you with resources and tools to be able to do that effectively and to do it in a way that is uniform. You know, we talked about this universal language, universal identifications, but you know, at the end of the day, every annual conference is different. We've got different leadership styles, you've got different people in different positions. And so we want to be sure that on our end, we're all on the same page, communicating with the AC COSROW committees and what we're providing at a general commission level. So if you get a chance to look at that Dropbox now, you can follow along with me while I share my screen. In the past, we used to ship actual boxes to annual conference COSROWs. I think that COVID changed that. I came after COVID, but I think that that's kind of where we made the transition over to digital drop boxes for the AC COSROW committees. So we have different folders in here. We've got, here, let me change the view. So we have different folders in here. One is a branding toolkit for AC COSROWs. This is kind of new. It is a toolkit that we released last year. It talks about our brand, our logo. If your AC COSROW committee is sharing stories about ministry or what's going on in your conference, we encourage you to use this branding logo and kit so that we can be uniform and have this identity for us. That's one folder. The other folder here is resources for monitoring. And those are similar to what was on the website that Meg Lossier shared earlier. So here we have the, let me click on it. We have a document that shares definitions and guidelines while you're monitoring. We also have the plenary session monitoring sheet. We've got the same thing. And here's an example of a script that was shared during a session in 2022. We use Becky Posey Williams as an example. So if you are called, if you are given the time and the space to go up to the podium and speak about monitoring, this is a script that you can use. Just, you know, change out your name and change out your conference and the leadership of your session. But this is just a template that you can use to present in front of the conference. Here's another example, a PowerPoint, a little infographic that talks about, you know, the ministry of monitoring. It has definitions for behaviors, bias perceptions, things like that. This is something that you can print and have available on your table at, you know, during your session, or you can just reference it.
Hey, Eileen.
Yes, ma'am.
Will you go back in that tab you were just in?
Yeah.
And there's a letter. I just saw the first thing. It said, "Dear Bishop."
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I just
You want
wanted
me
to
to
make
zoom
sure
in?
everyone saw that
Yeah.
as part of the report.
Mm-hmm.
That would
Yeah.
go, yeah, okay.
Yes, and actually, thank you for bringing that up. I was just kind of trying to go a little quickly because of time. I want to be respectful of your time, but this is important. Thank you, Becky. Someone asked in the chat if we are reporting to our annual conference or if we are reporting to the General Commission, and we report to both. You do have to submit this to, it's your secretary, right? It's the secretary of the annual conference. Yeah, but then also send the reports back to us. I want to give a shout out to Julianne Rosas. She was the first one to submit her monitoring report last year. So I was so excited telling everyone. But the reason, yep, look at it, I reported to GCSRW and I forwarded to AC. Perfect. The reason we ask you to report back to us is because as the General Commission, it is our responsibility to reflect it back to the church. The hope is that every annual conference will monitor and send us reports, and so that we can provide an accurate reflection. We're still working on that. But we require all of you, right? We require all the annual conferences to collaborate and report on that so that we can put it all in one form and be able to report back. So the other folders that are in this Dropbox link are resources for sexual ethics. This has PDFs and actual links. Resources for women in leadership. These are all links to web pages that you'll be like, if you click on them, they'll take you to that page. And then we also shared this last year. These are stickers that were created by the Indiana COSROW committee. I think they were a big hit in their annual conference and they shared them with us. And
It was a popular table. I'm a member of Indiana.
it was a popular table and they were gracious enough to share that with us and for us to be able to share it with other AC COSROW committees. So if you're interested in using these and printing them, they're available in the Dropbox folder. We have other pieces here like this flyer that you can download and share on your table, or this other handout. So I encourage you to check out the Dropbox link. When we send you a follow-up email, we'll also include this Dropbox link. And I also want to just point you to the place on our website. If you go to our homepage, you can access it by going to the AC COSROW tab here, or you can also go to GCSRW/AC COSROW, and it'll take you to this page. And then there's also a section here that says monitoring report submission. So you can go ahead and click on that and it'll take you to this page, and then you can submit your report, which will take you to a Dropbox page, and you can just hit add files and click the reports in a PDF or in a Word format, and it'll upload them here. So I can send you all that link right now. So you have it, but like I said, it'll also be in the follow-up email that we send. And I will be pestering you guys on social media if you follow us there. I'll be like, please, 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 Julianne, help me with this. I know we kind of sped through that, but does anybody have any questions on the resources that we are providing for now? Oh, and I would like to say, we're going to be updating the resources that are in that Dropbox, but we wanted you to be able to have access to it before we add some pieces. It won't be a big change, but it'll just be some updated content. Do you guys have any questions?
Well, I just want to thank you, Eileen Delgado, so Eileen is like the mastermind behind all these coffee chats and helping us execute them so well. So I'm really thankful for your ministry among us. And sorry, your time was shortened a little.
I think Crystal has
There's
a question.
Crystal?
Hi, so Crystal, Greater New Jersey. We have some challenges, I'm gonna say that politely, with our conference leadership and wanting to do things like monitoring and stuff. So my question is, knowing that our bishop is retiring and we will definitely have someone new in the next year, do you suggest we try to push monitoring for this annual conference coming up, knowing that we're probably going to get a lot of pushback, or suggest us waiting for a new Episcopal leader who might be more open? What would be your recommendation?
So my recommendation is to continue to try to monitor now. That's my recommendation.
Thank you.
Just want to thank you all for joining us today, and for, of course, my colleagues for sharing in this coffee chat. We are having 2 coffee chats this month because many of you are already aware that the young adult clergy women have started writing legislation so that all our annual conferences can have a template for the paternal leave policy. So that special coffee chat is going to be held on Wednesday, February the 28th at 10:30 a.m. Central Time. And you will receive an invitation to that event. The information that you received today, I hope, was user-friendly, and that you will be able to take it back to your annual conferences and share it and have your own monitoring coffee chats with your annual conference folks who will help you with this. It shouldn't be just a one-person show. But if you have any questions, I'm dsears@gcsrw.org. So thank you for your time. Have a blessed rest of the week. Bye for now.